Happy Friday to everyone that is listening. Be sure to like and subscribe before we get going here. We're going to dive into a little bit about this matchup on Saturday. Ole Miss will be traveling to Gainesville. Look, the message is simple, right? Ole Miss comes in at the number 9 slot on Tuesday night in the college football playoff rankings. You have to win out and you're in, Daylan. And even furthermore, you have a chance to, ultimately get a 5 through 8 seed, which could solidify you to host that first round playoff game. So there's a lot at stake here. But you're going into a really crazy environment. Look, they got a sold out stadium. You saw what they did against LSU last week in their 11-point win. And Ole Miss is coming off a bye. So we'll see how that kind of translates. But the first thing I wanted to start with, Daylan, was the injury report that got released last night. The only questionable player that Ole Miss has is Logan Diggs. And this is huge, right? I think if Logan plays, you're looking at a different style running back who we haven't seen on this Ole Miss team yet. And Ulysses Bentley said it the other day in his press conference, but, we have those finesse guys. I know Parrish is hurt, but Parrish was also kind of a finesse running back. Bentley's a finesse guy. And, you have Logan Diggs, who's that guy you've been missing. You've had to use J.J. Pegues on third and shorts instead of a big-time running back who you had last year like Quinshon Judkins. So this is massive. And in addition to possibly Logan Diggs, Tre Harris is going to be back. Jaden Williams is going to be back. Hopefully Jackson Dart's ankle is feeling a little bit better after Georgia. Lane went further to say that Princely, Walter Nolden, Caden Lee, JJ Pegues, all these guys are getting closer to 100% thanks to that bye week. I just wanted to get your thoughts, on the health of this team, Daylan, and, your excitement level, because I'm pretty fired up about it.
Yeah, man, I'm super just enthusiastic about the team right now. I think that's kind of the epitome of sports. You could, come into a season, having a great off season, whether that's collegiate sports, professional sports, whether you gain players in some type of, free agency type syndrome, or you're in a syndrome, you're in a college rectum and you return a lot of players. This is the moment where we kind of fully get the chance to see what this season is all about. And when I say that, it's, we get past Georgia, and for us, that's kind of like we got the job done. And when I say that, is that kind of asterisk over this team in Lane Kiffin was always they can't beat the big teams. They can't beat the team. And we've done that now. And that kind of is released off our shoulders. And now we move on to Florida with a squad that is, like you just said, basically almost 100% healthy for the most part. And it's just super exciting. I've watched JJ, Walter Nolan, Princely be beat up and banged up so many times throughout this season. And we've kind of talked about this earlier after the week as well. This bye week came at the perfect time. And even Lane said that throughout his press conferences this week. And I really believe that as well. I think going into this later part of the season, playing a Florida team that's honestly gotten really, I wouldn't say really hot, but is looking really good over the last couple weeks. Even though they lost to Georgia, they still look really good with DJ Lagway at the helm before he went out with the injury during that game. And in a Egg Bowl that's obviously the big rivalry game for us, and a Mississippi State team led by Jeff Lebby that obviously they have not lived up to what they want to, but it's year one, and they are still a team that can give any team in the conference, I think, a little bit of a run for their money, and it can make a team just have to change their game plan a little bit. So it's fun to see this team right at this stage with 2 games left in the regular season, and with the high possibility of now being in the playoffs. It's fun to see us healthy, and now we can see, at least for 2 games in the regular season, to see how well this team will be able to mesh together at full balance. And Logan Diggs is a guy that 119 carries last year, over 650 yards and 7 touchdowns. For those numbers with less than 120 carries, it's ridiculous. Yeah. But a guy of his stature too, he's like 6'2", 215. For a guy that moves like he does with his size is great. And you brought up a great point too. We've relied on J.J. Pegues in those 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 positions a lot this season, which is great. Don't get me wrong. J.J. has, been J.J. in those positions, and defenders bounce off of him. But in the back of my mind, I also think to myself, how much have some of his injury plagues played into him also being a part of the offense so much? And you may think for a guy his size and the limited times he comes on the field, that may not do much, but it actually can do a lot in terms of an injury for a player that's playing as well on the defensive line. So Getting Logan back, hopefully, and even if we don't get him back at 100% this weekend, I would still expect him to get some type of reps against Florida and then move on to Mississippi State in the later parts of the season, being at 100%. So moving on with him and getting Logan back is really just quite comforting because, I would say at the middle part of the season, Zach, I honestly didn't know we were going to get to see Logan Diggs this year. And that was based off two reasons. I just didn't know if he was going to get healthy at all for this season. And number two, at the middle part of the season, coming off the LSU loss, I'll be honest. I thought to myself, and I said I didn't know how we were going to be able to regroup and finish the season on a strong note to have a chance of being in the playoffs. Now that this team has gotten a little bit healthier, is playing the way that they had the potential to, and are winning games, and we have that position to now be in a playoff competition, I get to be a little bit more excited to see that Logan Diggs has a chance to come back and be a part of this offense. One thing that I kind of reminisce on a lot, you bring up Quinshon Judkins. I remember his freshman year, I kind of have mentioned this maybe once or twice before. He correlated really well with Zach Evans. And, he set all those rushing records his freshman year. And I think he had like the second most rushing yards in a season ever behind Herschel Walker. And he looked fantastic. And I know Zach Evans got beaten up a couple of games, and I think he missed the A&M game that year. But the correlation between those two players, Quinshon and Zach Evans that year, really was just fascinating to see, and it opened the offense up that year, especially for a guy, Jackson Dart, who had just come into Ole Miss at the time, and his first year in the system, an RPO system. He was still struggling quite well to understand how to play in that type of system and understand how to read defenses in that type of system. So to have those two guys at the time really just stack defenses was really good to see. So with Logan coming back, we may see something like that. We're kind of seeing more of Ulysses Bentley now, which I think all fans, including myself, are really grateful for. And just how healthy Logan Diggs will be able to go. I'm sure we'll see him be in that type of role as well to be a little bit more of that power back like you just talked about, and giving Ulysses a chance to get off the field in 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 3rd and 2 situations. And one thing that I want to bring up about Logan that I'm so excited about too, just his size, but watching film on him with his size, he's a really good pass blocker. And I think that's something that Henry Parrish just struggled with his size. And Ulysses is not horrible at pass blocking, but as well as a little undersized as well. But Logan is a guy that's really built, has strong thighs, and is just really good at pass blocking as well, helping out on the line of scrimmage. And so I'm excited to see that portion as well, because it gives Jackson just a little bit more time to make some things happen if he needs to with his legs, or dump it off to run it to a running back when he blocks and then goes up the field to come help out in the passing game. So I'm excited for Logan Diggs. I really, really am. This is a part of the offense that has struggled this year, the running game, and as well the blocking for Jackson. That's something that has been cleaned up really, really well since the Oklahoma game. But of course, earlier in the part of the season, the offensive line and the pass blocking for Jackson Dart really looked to be in a bind, and John Garrison and company got called out a lot for it, honestly, and respectfully so. But as well, the offensive line has also gotten healthy. But I think with Logan Diggs getting healthy as well, that also brings a different dynamic to what this offense may be able to do with the healthy Logan Diggs moving forward.
Absolutely, Daylan. And then, you look at the plays where Pegues comes in the game. Let's say it's a 3rd and 1. Let's say Diggs is in the game now, and you have Tre Harris back. Instead of putting Pegues in the game, knowing that JJ is going to run it up the middle, which he's done a great job with, but now you can maybe do an RPO with a Tre Harris slant. So it opens up the offense a little more, and hopefully takes the pressure off, the shoulders of Pegues, who we don't want to see in that role too much because of injuries, like we talked about. Staying on the topic of the offensive line here, this Florida defensive line absolutely ate last week. They recorded 7 sacks and 11 tackles for loss against an LSU offensive line who I believe had allowed 6 sacks the entire season before that game. Really dominant unit. When they went out last week and really, stood out for the entire game. Nussmeier looked to be hurt at the end of the game. So one of my keys here is protecting Jackson Dart. We've seen it all year long. Jackson is the best when he's comfortable, when he has time to go through his reads and get the ball out of his hands. When we didn't see that was in the losses against Kentucky and LSU. I kind of am looking for Ole Miss to take a similar approach to Texas and stretch the ball down the field a little bit. Quinn Ewers threw a 50-yarder, a 45-yarder, and 2 30-plus yarders to combine for a total of 333 passing yards on the day when Texas played Florida 2 weeks ago. So I want to see them take these deep shots with your guys like Tre Harris, who are back. We've seen Jordan Watkins do it for the last 3 games. But at the same time, Florida's a team who I was just talking to one of a Florida analyst on a different show, but they run a lot of 2-man defense, putting 2 safeties deep. So what that does is open the middle of the field. So yes, you're getting Tre Harris back. It's awesome. But what you did against Georgia and Arkansas, and even in that second half of Oklahoma, that similar type of scheme has to play. And you have to feed Daquan Wright. You have to get Caden Prieskorn and Juice Wells involved and get them the ball in space, because we saw what Daquan and all those guys can do. The yards after catch, it's phenomenal. And it's something that you have to really keep going, especially if you want to go into the swamp and win this game. I just want to get your thoughts. What do you think the offense has to do, Daylan, whether it's similar or different? And how do you see them performing with a guy like Tre Harris coming back into the rotation?
You bring up a lot of great points. I think the Arkansas game was a great epitome of how to play when you're facing an aggressive defensive line and an aggressive defense in general. And like you just brought up, I think Daquan Wright and Caden Prieskorn would be 2 big keys. How do we just get them going early and attack them really well early in the game to start off on the first drive? And that will make the Florida defense try to sort of change their scheme a little bit, and they will have to kind of cover the focus on that type of game plan for a moment. And then when that happens, how do we then divert to something else that we want to do and be comfortable with? One thing that I've seen this offense do repetitively over the season that has worked really well is quick out routes, and Caden Lee has done that really well this season. He's kind of stepped up being that guy and just getting out on the open parts of the field and being good at out routes and making catches and getting up the field. Expect to see that. I see a lot of quick hikes from this team. We'll dump it off to Cade or Juice Wells this year, and expect them to make a catch and get up the field and get some yards after catch. One thing that I also want to bring up is, this is just a random thought, but I rewatched the LSU versus Georgia 2019 SEC championship game a couple days ago, and Georgia at that time kind of played Joe Burrow in a way that they've sent a lot of pressure, which forced Joe Burrow to as well make a lot of throws that he had to take hits on. And I would expect Jackson Dart to have to do the same thing against Florida. The LSU offensive line this year is, before the Florida game, were the top offensive line in the conference with sacks against. And like you just said, 6 sacks coming in, and they allowed seven against the Florida Gators. And so I expect our offensive line to play a really clean game. But also in the realistic point of view, I expect this Florida defensive line coming off a great weekend and high momentum to also attack Jackson Dart. So how do we scheme up play calls that, like I just talked about with Logan Diggs and even Ulysses Bentley, how do we scheme up play calls that we can have the running back in the backfield kind of be a decoy for a second and then get out into the passing game and catch a dump off pass to Jackson Dart when he sees a linebacker, he sees a defensive lineman coming his way? That's one big thing I think is going to be key. Dart is going to get hit, and he has to know when to get rid of the ball to a receiver, but also when he's outside of the pocket, throw it away instead of just taking a dump sack or taking a tackle for loss. He's going to take hits, and he has to be able to make the smart throws when he's getting ready to get hit. And I really want to see that be intertwined against Florida. He's been really good over the last few weeks. He's reading the progressions really well. He's reading the defenses really well and how the safeties are playing. And I don't want to overuse something that's not available for us. There's no need to make something happen when things are already available. And we saw that happen a lot in our 2 losses this year. And if we continue to do that like we played in those 2 games, we won't win against Florida. But I don't believe we will. I believe that this is the point where the team has rallied together really well. And, the press conference of Jackson Dart after the LSU game with his black hoodie on, just kind of saying we have to win out, that is kind of come as the notorious kind of slang for this team for the rest of the season. So I expect Jackson to play a tough game. I think this is going to be a game that is going to get dirty. I think Florida is really rolling really high right now, and it's going to take a lot of consistency from our offense. One big thing that I also want to bring up with you is, how do we finish drives? LSU had 3 drives against Florida that lasted over 20 combined minutes, but they only finished those 3 drives with 6 points. And And that was something as well in the early parts of the season that we were struggling in, which was the red zone. And when we get to those areas against this team, I think we really have to rely on what we're used to. And that's why I'm happy that Logan Diggs is going to be coming back as well, Tre Harris, because that gives us a little bit of big play opportunities in the red zone, but as well some form of formability in the red zone when we need some type of short plays to set up a big play type of opportunity. One thing that I thought Lane Kiffin did really well in the Georgia game that helped us essentially win the game was also rely on Caden Davis. And Caden Davis would finish 5 for 5 with 15 points in that game. And I mean, 15 points essentially wins us that Georgia game. I think as well, we have to continue that. There's no need to force a fourth down when we can take points from our kicker, who's looking really good right now, despite all the criticism he faced in the early parts of the season. That's going to be another key. Just how do we take the points? You know, if we do everything as best as we can in the red zone type area, how do we not force something and not leave that drive with 0 points? And that even goes to a point as well. If we're on our side of the 50, Zach, and you know it's a third and 13, say. There's no need to force a deep pass, try to get a first down when you can maybe run it for 5 yards and then set up a kick by Caden Davis for 3 points. You know, it's just going to come down to as well as smart football. So I'm excited to see this matchup against the Florida Gators. I think the offense needed the break, and I think Charlie Wise is coming together really well over the last few weeks, and I know I have to give props when props is due. I obviously, myself and a lot of people included, have criticized him a lot this year, and for fair reasons. I think that everyone just kind of watching understood that this offense was not living up to the potential, and I think Charlie Wise and Lane Kiffin have fully come together and understood what's at stake for this year, and they've gotten things together. So I also want to give props to what Charlie and Lane have done over the last few weeks in terms of continuing to not allow this team to shut down after the LSU loss, but continue to excel over the last few weeks as well. Excuse me.
No, without a doubt. And on the flip side, we've all been doing it every single game seemingly, but the credit to Pete Golding is just as cool, And when you look at this game, Florida, their offensive line has allowed 3 sacks in the last 3 games. So it's kind of the underrated spot, and it matters a lot because you take into account DJ Lagway and his injury status. The guy is not 100%. I would say he's somewhere around 70 to 80%, but he's good enough to still go out there and go through his progressions and make some really nice throws. He's very accurate. He's an athletic kid, but he's not able to move as much. And what you have to do is get pressure. I'm not concerned about this. Ole Miss has faced seemingly the best offensive lines that you can face when you look at, teams like LSU, right? I know Ole Miss didn't do a great job there, but you're missing Princely. Then you go against Georgia, who, by the way, before the Georgia game, that Georgia offensive line was elite.
Yep.
And then after the game, all these national analysts, the Georgia offensive line is bad. No. Ole Miss just has a very good defensive line. But as in right now, Florida's allowed 3 sacks in the last 3 games. I expect Ole Miss to go in there and wreak havoc simply because they're that good. And if you can't get pressure with 4, I think there's no doubt you throw Sonny P in the mix or you rush a linebacker, you're going to find ways to get after DJ Lagway. And he hasn't really faced that. I don't believe let's see. LSU, 0 sacks against Florida last week. So DJ was standing there all day just picking apart this defense. And I don't think that's going to work against Ole Miss. So I fully expect Ole Miss to go over 4.5 sacks. I think that's going to be a good stat to kind of look out for here. I think Princely is going to really enjoy this one, back where he transferred from, and I think he's going to have a hell of a day. At the same time, I think the interior in the rush defense is going to do a great job. I don't see Florida advancing the ball against Ole Miss as they did against LSU. And people can say whatever they want, but this Ole Miss defense has proven to be one of the best in the country. They're going to continue to play that way. They're coming back healthier, and they're not going against a wide receiving core that's nearly as lethal, as schools like Arkansas. Andrew Armstrong's a really good player. Georgia, Bell, Lovett, all those guys. LSU, Kyron Lacey. The best Florida receiver, his name is Elijah Badger. He's a great player, but he's not at the status of those players. And for that reason, I think the Ole Miss defense is going to absolutely suffocate DJ Lagway and really, take the Florida offense out of the game, putting the ball in the hands of Jackson Dart to, go out there and win this one and potentially turn it into a result like the one in Fayetteville a couple weeks ago, Dalen.
Yeah, and I'd like to argue as well. I know that numbers wise against LSU, the defensive line may not have put up a lot of sacks, but just
Yeah.
watching the game, I think I thought the defensive line still did really well in trying to putting pressure up on Gary Nussmeier, and forcing him to make a lot of throws that he was uncomfortable with. And I think that's just something that we're gonna have to do against Florida as well. Just even if we don't, finish a lot of sacks, how do we still put pressure on Lagway to evade his normal parts of the pocket and either make something happen with his arm or with his legs? I think that one part of the defense is going to have to be really good at stopping Lagway. Is, I don't just watch them, call a lot of quarterback draws or quarterback scrambles for DJ, but he will make a pass play that's not open and he will make something happen with his legs. I think that we're going to have to rely on TJ Dottery, Kari Coleman, even Chris Pupal Jr. in those areas to kind of sit back at times and play help with the receivers, but as well keep an eye on Lagway when there are no receivers open for Florida. How does he try to make a first down happen or a touchdown happen with his legs? And so I think those are three guys as well that are really good open field tacklers and have developed this season as well at being leaders on the defense and saying, hey, I've got this. And I think those are three guys that will kind of be watch out on how DJ plays this weekend. I'm excited because for me, the Georgia game was not only how good of talent we have, but how good was the play calling. I think we forget that Zach Arnett and Joe Judge are on this staff this year, and I don't just want to just give so much credit to them, but I think that the addition of those two from this offseason is really being shown, and the changes from the NCAA before the season started to kind of allow analysts to have a more of a coaching role within teams this year is truly being shown for us. And I think that those have been two guys that have been talked about really well this year. And I think Zach, his just reputation as a defensive coordinator and of course a head coach as well, his experience in that role as well is really being able to help Pete Golding do what Pete wants to do, but as well allow Zach to see things that maybe Pete isn't seeing because he's watching a certain part of the defense, and it's helping Pete out tremendously. I think the coaching staff has done a fantastic job, and I'm really just oblivious to say this, but I think this is the best defense in the country. And although you look at our past defense and say those numbers aren't as great as our run defense or our sacks numbers, but they showed up really good against a Georgia team that is one of the top passing offenses in the country. And I think if we continue to play like that, that this defense is going to be really lights out. We have a group of experienced guys in the secondary and in the defensive backs positions. I think John Saunders Jr. and Trey Amos have been two of the standout guys in those positions, and they've continued to play really well. But even Trey Washington, I think, has stepped up tremendously. And even Jaden Kennedy, I know he's received a lot of criticism as well, but he kind of switched roles in the midst of the season. And I mean, for a guy that has switched roles in terms of position, he's played pretty decently as well in his new role. So I think just coming together with this team is going to be what's it all about. This defense has continued to play aggressive every single game of this season, and I expect nothing less coming off a bye week and a huge win the week before from this defense that's riding high off momentum and high on belief that there's no offense that can run up the scoreboard on them as well.
Yeah, and I mentioned it earlier, but I think the defense is going to really command this game. The offense may struggle at times, but the defense is going to do what it's been doing all year long. And I can say with confidence that they're not going to allow a lot of points here. The Florida kicker, by the way, is electric. This guy, he really doesn't miss. So, you kind of want to keep Florida away from that side of the field. I know field goals are better to allow than touchdowns, but, the points add up, and we saw that with Caden Davis against Georgia. So that's something to make a mental note of if you're an Ole Miss fan. Kind of getting into the last segment here, Dalen, I just wanted to get your score prediction. For me, I have Ole Miss winning 31-24. I don't think the game is going to feel like a 7-point game in the end, but I think I think Florida maybe goes down and kicks a garbage time field goal or a garbage time touchdown. I think Jackson Dart's going to have an incredible day. Tre Harris and his presence will be felt. But the key for me is, can you establish other wide receivers at the same time? And I think Jackson Darts will be able to do that. I think he's gotten comfortable getting the ball in the hands of your guys like Daquan Wright, Watkins, Wells, and Priestcorn to the point where I don't think that the return of Harris is going to matter as much as people think it will, just because the offense is rolling so successfully without him. And on the defensive side, I do have Ole Miss getting over 4.5 sacks. I do think they're going to take a lot of plays away from DJ Lagway because he's not as mobile. And you do have to realize that, quite honestly, this Ole Miss defense is going to get after him. They've gotten after every single quarterback they've gone against this year, and he's still a freshman. So there's a lot of things at play there that don't make me confident in Florida. And therefore, I got Ole Miss winning 31-24 day.
Man, I'm going right with you on the score for Ole Miss. I'm going 31-17. I think that this Florida offense is riding really high on a lot of momentum, and I think DJ is going to make enough plays happen where they have some type of momentum, especially going into halftime. But I'm really proud of this defense and the way they've adjusted. Even against Oklahoma, we watched Jackson Arnold run the ball a lot in that first half. And then Pete Golden came out of halftime, made a lot of adjustments, and we shut that running game down for Jackson Arnold. Expect to kind of see that. I think, Florida's going to come out and try to gun in the first half, but expect adjustments to be made by our defense, and we correlate to how to put a little bit more pressure on him and kind of keep him contained. I think it's going to be a game that is like every single game for us, except for the Georgia game. I think that first drive, expect our offense to come out and try to gun to put up 7 points immediately to just set pressure for the game and set a type of tempo and momentum for the game. I think this is going to be a huge game for Dart. His final regular season road game in an Ole Miss jersey. How does he kind of go out with a bang? But as well, I think over the last few weeks, he's picked up his game, and it's kind of allowed him to get more in the Heisman conversation. Well, this is a time you're going down to Gainesville on the road, a big game for this program. This is a game for you to show out and kind of cement yourself to really be a Heisman Trophy winner. And that was one of my just kind of goals that I kind of set for the team at the beginning of the season. Before the season started, I wanted to see Dart in New York, and I think that opportunity is still within reach for him, but this is going to be a really good game, big game for that. So I really hope Dart has the best time in his life. Just enjoy the moment, have fun with it. And I think when he's at his highest possibilities, he's one of the best players in the country. So expect JD to go out there, just have fun with it. And I think it's going to be a fun one, but I got the Rebs going 31-17 against the Florida Gators.
Absolutely, man. And, the Heisman, the playoff push, the national championship, none of it matters if you don't win these games. So, we can't talk about the importance enough. I do like the experience that Ole Miss has played with in terms of having their backs against the wall. They've played like this for the last 3 weeks, and I think they're used to the feeling at this point. And that's another reason why I think they're going to handle business nicely in the Swamp. I know it's going to be busy. I know it's going to be loud. But it's going to be fun. Unfortunately, I will not be in attendance. We got Thanksgiving break coming up here. Mm-hmm. But the game will kick off at 11 a.m. Central Time, I believe, on ABC Network. Yes. Anything else you got, Daylan?
No, man. Enjoy the weekend, y'all. Make sure you support your Rebs. And as well, I kind of made a tweet about this a few days ago, but if you had tickets to the Egg Bowl and you're not able to attend, make sure you're selling those tickets to the Rebel fans so we can sell out the vault and make sure our seniors go out with a final regular season home game with the loudest crowd possible behind them. So make sure you're getting out there if you can be there for the game next Friday. But if not, make sure you're selling those tickets to some Rebel fans so they can attend as well.
Yeah, man. As always, be sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Be sure to stay tuned to therebelwalk.com for all your Ole Miss sports needs. Hotty toddy, go Rebs. Thanks, guys.
Hotty toddy.